Well, the U.S. researcher says it's time to move away from starchy crops and into healthier foods. Jessica Fanzo at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore says the current food crisis, in which prices have hit records, requires rethinking the world system. She calls it a chance to cut humanity's addiction to highly subsidized grains like wheat, rice, and corn, and to switch subsidies to fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes, along with other nutritious foods. Now, when the trade deal to replace NAFTA was made, one of the major sticking points, of course, was the movement of food and food products across borders. But how is supply management stacking up during a pandemic and a potential global food shortage? Let's bring in Sylvain Charlebois. He is the director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, frequent contributor here on CB24 Breakfast. Sylvain, it's always great to have you on board here. Of course, we're bringing this up, the supply management side of things, because federal Conservative Party leader Scott Aitchison brought this up in a video that's been getting a lot of traction online, talking about supply management and how it may harm Canadian farmers, especially dairy farmers. From your perspective, you study this, you look at this. Is supply management harming farmers? Could it help if we change the system a little?
I think it is. I mean, all dairy farmers are happy with the current system, but many of them don't realize that the system they're trying to protect is actually hurting the dairy industry, really. In 1970, we had 45,000 dairy farms in Canada. We're down to barely 10,000. And basically, supply management, in a nutshell, is to produce what we need in Canada. But if we need less, it means that we have to reduce the size of the industry. That's basically what supply management is all about. It's not about stimulating demand. It's not about exporting our great dairy products around the world, because a lot of people want Canadian products. Supply management is not about that. It's just about providing safe, good food to Canadians, and that's it, which is really why we're seeing many farms disappearing in Canada.
Yeah, it seems so protectionist and like you said, kind of counterintuitive to economics, et cetera. And let's pick up on the idea of people want Canadian products. Canadian farms are clean, well run, generally speaking. The products that we get, we eat them, we know how good they are, and I'm sure the rest of the world like to get their hands on them. But we've also kind of, in this program, our borders are relatively closed off to other dairy products as well, so limiting that, so that also limits our ability to export, therefore, on the other side, limiting more growth for farms as well, right?
Exactly. There are three layers to supply management. One, you need to own very expensive quotas, government-sanctioned quotas, to produce milk commercially in Canada. So the average farm would own anywhere between $2.5 to $3 million worth of quotas. And that's why, so it's very restrictive. It's an exclusive club. Second, prices are fixed by the Canadian Dairy Commission. That's why last fall, if you remember, Nick, we both talked about this, I think a few months ago. The CDC basically decided to raise prices by 8.4%, which is why right now consumers are paying way more for cheese. Butter is up 20.1% in Ontario year to year. Butter. It's getting expensive out there, and people are noticing. And the third layer, you just mentioned it, tariffs on imports, 300%. So if you're an American producer and you want to sell butter to Canadians, you have to actually pay a 300% tariff. That's why it's a very protecting market. And what Americans want to do is to open things up. And actually, Canadian dairy farmers have a lot to gain, in my view, to sell to Americans, to sell to Europeans our great products. But right now, there's some pushback, and I think that the PCC candidate is really raising an important issue here.
So is there an appetite then, Sylvain, from Canadian farmers to get rid of supply management and open up the markets, as it were?
So I'll answer you in this way. So when I look at dairy farming in Canada, I see two groups. You have marketing boards and you have dairy farmers. Dairy farmers are smart people. They see the writing on the wall. They see that there are issues with the system, and they want to talk about it, but they're not allowed to. Marketing boards are the ones really leading the charge here, and they don't want any change at all. That's really the problem. So the dairy farmers of Canada, they spend $150 million a year telling Canadians to drink more milk, but they also are a very powerful lobby group, and they will shut down any dissenting voices, unfortunately.
Okay, really fascinating conversation. Sylvain Charlebois, always appreciate the insight you bring. Thanks so much for joining us again this morning.
Take care, Nick.
Take care.